There is the man right there, Shehan Jeyarajah. He has authored the most important story of the college football offseason for CBS Sports. West Texas boom, inside Texas Tech's bold, all-in bet on NIL and the billionaire landman responsible. Shehan, you done did it again, man. Amazing work.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I got to say, I'm just impressed that people read 5,000 words of story. I remember turning it into my editor and being like, I really hope he doesn't make me cut this down. But I'm so honored by the way that people have responded to it.
Yeah, it's old school journalism at its best, and it's up on CBSSports.com, which is great. There's no paywall. I mean, there's no nonsense. You get right into it and get into the bones of the story like this. My first question for you, this stuff has been going on in the shadows for so long, right? Everything that now is out front with NIL and the payment of players. And it's been such a successful marketing boom for Texas Tech over the past 2 years, especially this year, which you've chronicled in your story. The academics around Texas Tech, how do they feel about this? Did you get any reaction of any of the old school people who have, scholar in their bones? How do they feel about this?
Well, I think that, look, there's always an understanding that money is zero sum, right? Where if money's going to one place, it's not going somewhere else. But I think that there's an understanding across the university that, this is an important part of our university from a marketing perspective, right? I mean, when you think about Texas Tech, the times that you see them most, if you aren't in this state, are when a softball player absolutely blows up, whenever a football team is featured on CBS Sports. And the other thing as well is that when you talk about the amount of money that's been handed out as part of this process, it's coming from private donors. And it's especially coming from Cody Campbell, from John Sellers over at Double Eagle Energy Holdings, from Gary Peterson is another key donor for them, Dusty Womble. So it's not necessarily like this money is being taken from staff salaries on the academic side to go to the athletic department. But I think that, there's always a little bit of that tension, but there's an understanding that, this is just part of the game.
You did such a great job. And part of the reason you were able to show off your skill set and your journalism bones is because you were granted the access. And I think that's something, I did PR in the NBA for years, and I've been around PR guys who are amazing. And I've been around PR guys who they know one word and it's no. What was it like for you to get that access granted to you, and how did it affect the way that you covered Texas Tech in this story?
Well, I texted one of my friends in the industry. I feel like it's a cheat code getting Joey McGuire, who's tremendous with access, with Matt Dowdy, the communications guy over at Texas Tech, who is just unbelievable, one of the best in the entire industry. And look, I think that Texas Tech being where it is, what it is, they're always going to be a bit more receptive to certainly people coming out and covering them. But the level of access that I got was just unbelievable. They brought me into their facility. They showed me around the new Womble Football Center, which, by the way, it's called the Football Resort for a reason. It is unbelievable. I also got to talk to essentially any person that I asked for. I asked for JT Toppin. It's mostly a football story, but you know what? They found time for me to talk to JT Toppin. I talked to David Bailey, who just got there, right? I mean, you think about the way that a lot of these other programs handle, especially their high-powered newcomers. There's sort of this, there's almost a cooling off period, right? We got to make sure that they don't say anything that we don't want them to say. I mean, just, again, a guy that I talked to was Romello Height, who's somebody who landed this spring, and he's a little bit of a, he is a talker, man. He is kind of willing to say what's on his mind. But there's also this understanding of, I'm coming to West Texas. I'm coming to Texas Tech because I want to understand what's happening there. And I've gotten opportunities where I've gotten maybe to interview a player or two, a coach or two. But the reason I was able to get such a comprehensive understanding of this place and of this city is because I talked to a lot of people who frankly didn't even make the story.
Yeah, that's my question for you, because I wanted to know, you had done such a great job casting this wide net. How many people did you talk to for this story?
Probably, when you talk about formalized interviews, probably 12 or so. And when you talk about talking to anybody, like 20 people at least. Like it was a lot of people. That's something that I think is a lot of value about getting to be on the ground, right? You get to go between people's offices and just have short conversations with them. You get to talk to the barista at the coffee shop. You get to talk to the comms guy at the city of Lubbock. And that's, again, when you're doing it remotely, those are each individual interviews you have to set up. It's a much longer process. So the fact that they were so welcoming, so able with their time. I mean, I got 9 interviews at Texas Tech in one day, which is just crazy stuff. I mean, it was a very busy day, I will say that. But I think that it just gives you so much more understanding. And I think, again, when you get these little interactions, and I mean, I talk about getting interviews. I was never told that an interview had to end. Like, I spoke to some of these people for 45 minutes just about themselves and about them as people and their stories. And again, maybe 4 minutes of it made the article as quotes, but the other 40 minutes was so critical to just me understanding how to write this piece.
How about some of the reaction? Because again, you have relationships all over college football. What have you heard from some other big, let's say, big dogs like Texas A&M? You're a Baylor grad. I mean, folks reaching out to you about, hey, like, we're doing it this way over here. How did other schools, other fan bases, and other members of athletic departments respond to this story?
Well, first of all, I mean, the reception has been so tremendous. I've gotten so many messages from people talking about how much they love the story, and that's really cool for me. But it's interesting, right? I think that one of the reasons I wanted to write this story, and one of the reasons I wrote it the way that I did, is there is this belief, I think, to an extent, that Texas Tech just threw out the most money and that's the only thing they did. That's the whole story, right? Like that's all there is to it. And so I think for me to have the chance to go inside and say, no, they started scouting guys who might enter the portal in July. They had all this work done. They were ready. It wasn't really a story just about money and cap. It was also a story of preparation. And I think that that's what has impressed people the most, is that level of preparation. I mean, James Blanchard, their general manager, who really spearheaded those efforts. I mean, he was identified by Notre Dame and USC as a guy who could potentially get ahead of the curve from that perspective. And so I think that ultimately, like, this is going to be a model, not necessarily just the money being thrown around, but the level of preparation that it requires. And also, I think, one thing that I heard repeatedly from Texas Tech was, look, Cody Campbell, their big billionaire donor, John Sellers, all these guys that I mentioned, they allow these guys to do their jobs. I mean, Joey McGuire is a major college football coach, but he lets James Blanchard handle the personnel side of things and doesn't overstep. So I think that's something that really is transferable when you start talking about bringing it to other schools.
You mentioned Cody Campbell, and Scotty, we're going to turn it over to him in a sec. He's got some questions for you. But, he is the architect of this blueprint. It's, And it comes from a real pure place. His whole family, as you document in the story, goes back. I think his grandfather was in the first class that graduated, or the first class at Texas Tech in 1925. He himself played football there. What is the upshot for him? Is it just winning? Is it just like all this money he's putting into it? Does he just want to see Texas Tech in their first Big 12 title game, or possibly in the college football playoff, or a college football title? Is that the return for him?
Well, and that's a great question, and it's one that I asked a lot of people, because like there are donors who give a lot of money, but I've never seen a donor as intrinsically tied to the program. I mean, maybe like the closest you get is a Tillman Fertitta at Houston, but like this is even, I think, a level more than that. And so they decided to make him chair of their board of regents as well. And so when I look back, like you said, all these family relationships are a big part of it. I think the relationship to West Texas, wanting to elevate really just the entire region, not just the university, plays a role as well. But I think that he also saw a moment that replicated in some ways his business career. For people who don't know, Cody Campbell and John Sellers, they do not come from oil money. They do not come from the oil industry, despite being from West Texas. They went out and basically bought up small parcels of land to sell to bigger companies for mineral rights, right? And so they were very much on the ground. They were very much grinding, driving between places, and they took advantage of timing and opportunity. And I think for Cody Campbell, more than, look, everybody obviously wants the opportunity opportunity to help elevate their university and their athletic department. But I think for him, he saw that piece of opportunity, the thing that might not exist for generations after this, and said, let's try to maximize this individual moment. And a return for this is, yes, success on the field, success, reaching championship level, hopefully going to the college football playoff, but it's also revitalization of the community, of the athletic department, revitalization of the city of Lubbock, more attention paid. And frankly, I mean, one marker of success of this is the fact that a journalist from Dallas went out and wrote a story for CBSSports.com.
Scotty, go ahead. What do you got?
Let me make Shehan the big face there. There's my guy. Hey, Shehan, this had everything I want in a story. It was good football. I love Joey McGuire. You even wrote about some great top 50 Texas Monthly barbecue. So I would just, anybody who hasn't read this story yet, you got to check it out. I just want to break it down to let's just put it simply. And you quoted Joey McGuire about this just a little bit in the story. What happens if after this offseason, Texas Tech finishes 4th in the Big 12? Like, how does Lubbock and all of these people within the athletic department and even fans around that athletic department, how do they respond if all of this money and excitement and portal success leads to another disappointing finish for them?
Well, and I had a lot of people in my replies or in messages be like, well, none of this matters. They can throw all the money they want. They're still not going to win anything. And here's the thing. I never in the story said that this plan is going to work, right? They know the risks of this moment and kind of have embraced them in a lot of ways. It's interesting, right? I mean, I mentioned this is potentially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because of the rules changing on July 1st. They're not going to be able to throw around unlimited money to the same extent the way that they've been able to, the past couple of months. So if this doesn't work, I mean, you're kind of back to the drawing board in some ways, right? One thing that I heard repeatedly is Joey McGuire felt like, we can, we can't be negatively recruited for our facilities because they're astonishing. We can't be negatively recruited for our coaching staff because we've done a really good job. We can't be negatively recruited for the city of Lubbock because people come here and realize what it has here. What we can be negatively recruited for is our lack of success. We haven't been on that biggest stage. And you look over the past 15 years or so, every single other power conference school in Texas has been on that stage. Baylor, TCU, they've been in playoff races. Texas, of course. Texas A&M had Johnny Manziel. They've been to an Orange Bowl. Houston even, right? I mean, you look at some of the teams that they've had. Texas Tech is the lone exception. And so if this doesn't work, well, they feel like, we don't have much choice but to try to make it happen because we have been the program that's been left behind in so many ways. We can't just sit on our laurels and hope that things improve.
And then I had one more for you because I think this is important to you, and I know it's important to me. You are kind of cutting against the grain here. You are writing a long-form story that took you a long time to research and to do these interviews. And I know how hard you work to write and edit and edit and edit and trim and trim and edit and edit. I know how that process goes. And we're in an era of guys like me and Pete winging it for an hour, every weekday morning.
Winging it?
Sometimes winging it, often winging it, often insightful, but winging it. But you are, Shehan, I mean, I put it in the headline here, this is old school, good stuff, feature story journalism in a world which seems, at least monetarily, or at least in what gets social media buzz, typically to be devaluing that, and probably has been for 15, 20 years, right? Even since you and I were in school. What would be your hopes, for sports media moving forward in light of I guess the reaction you've received to the story, and B, for yourself, dude? We've been friends a long time. This is what I want you doing forever. In addition to Pete and I both think you need to be on TV. But how do you view the media landscape right now, and how does this story play into that? And what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to be mad if it leads to a bigger check over at CBS Sports. I'll tell you that much. But I do think that, this is probably a whole podcast that we could do separately, but like
we can.
I look at the state of journalism right now, right? And especially, I mean, frankly, right, we've got these, AI, all this sort of stuff, right? Like there's all this conversation about the idea of how, well, you can just replace some of this basic writing with stuff like that, right? I think that what I hoped going in, and what I think hopefully has been borne out in a lot of ways, is that my job and jobs like mine are not, I don't think, being made irrelevant. I think that they're changing. I think that it's going to be more important than ever in this new era to write stories that are human. Because we can, the content type thing, right? Like that's going to be the easiest thing in some ways to replace, like making lists and all this sort of stuff. You can't replicate human connection and human understanding through stuff like, the sort of quick turn stuff that we've got. And I mean, I really want to emphasize this. Like I made one trip to Lubbock for this story. This story, in a lot of ways, has been years in the making. It's been years of building relationships at Texas Tech. It's been years of stopping by and understanding that place. It's been years of getting to know Joey McGuire, understand what makes him tick, get ideas around him, right? Like this is a long-term process, not just from the perspective of actually writing the piece, which, by the way, it came together way quicker in my head than you could ever imagine. I wrote it basically in one evening, which is a whole other conversation. But I think that, again, the legwork and the understanding that I needed to be able to do this piece well is something that only could have happened because I've covered the Big 12 in the state of Texas for 10 years. And so that's my plea to other writers and journalists, but also to other editors, is make sure and focus on the humanity in the story. I think that, I mentioned AI and stuff like that. I think gambling also, right? Like I think that that's something that is dehumanizing sports in some ways. And people talk about stuff like, coverage of the NBA finals and stuff like that. I think that there's such little focus on legend building and myth making. And I hope that in a small way, my piece kind of helps show there truly is an appetite for it.
No, it's like an old school. It really is like a throwback piece to something that, as a kid, I grew up reading, in Sports Illustrated, that you just you devoured and you couldn't wait to get to it. You just done such a tremendous job. Last question for you, and it's about Joey McGuire, because the guy is the real deal. And you really root for him, right? And this article just shows, I love how you took us off the field with, the breakfasts on Wednesdays, and every night he's out at the steakhouse, every time he turns around, another possible transfer or recruit comes in. What was he like when you were around him for this story? Like being able to be around him like that, like blow by blow, his energy level, it seems like it's unparalleled. The guy's always going.
No, he 100% is. And I write it in the story a little bit, but Joey McGuire, in all of the best ways, is a high school coach at heart. He is somebody who understands his place in the community. He is somebody who understands his role to players. He's somebody who understands also, by the way, what the media can help do for him. And I think that, again, he is somebody who understands that his job is really so much bigger than being a football coach. And, there are places where that's a little different, right? But I think at Texas Tech, you are the mayor of Lubbock. You're the governor of West Texas in so many ways when you're the head football coach at Texas Tech. And he has been so visible and vocal in the community and a cheerleader for the community as well. For me, again, he is as laid back, as down to earth a guy as you're ever going to find. You go into some people's offices, and actually James Blanchard kind of had a great quote about this that I think made the story, where he was kind of like, so many guys are thinking about elevating constantly, right? That's kind of the idea of it, right? Elevate, elevate, elevate. But I think that because of him, he was at Cedar Hill for 14 years as a head coach. He had only coached at 3 places in his life before it, right? He had coached at Crowley High School, where he went. He coached at Cedar Hill. He coached at Baylor as an assistant coach and went to Texas Tech. I think he understands in so many ways what he has, and ultimately it made sense for him, to be at Texas Tech. And I think that he's really embodied so much of what that community needed.
All right, one more question for you. I lied. What's the number one thing you left out of the story that was painful for you, that you wanted to get in there, where the word count finally caught up to you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I wish that I could have delved deeper into. I mean, I think that one thing was like just the level. I've spoke so much about football, but like this investment obviously has gone so much further than that. I think that is really something that maybe got lost a little bit in the process. But like softball, like we've talked about so much, basketball, like there's so much happening right now. And the other thing too that I'll talk about is I really like hardly got into the state of the facilities, right? Like just incredible facilities out there. I could have written a whole story about just how incredible those facilities were. So again, as a writer on the national scene, you probably have one shot at this. Like you probably aren't going to get to write another 5,000 word story about Texas Tech for another decade. I really wanted to try to get it, but I got great advice from Lee Jenkins, the old Sports Illustrated writer, when I went to a conference a while back. You know what? You should only use 10% of what you have, and the other 90% might be incredible, but find the best 10%, and hopefully I did that.
You did it, and thank God the part about you eating barbecue with your hands was part of that 10%, because I think everyone that's been in a traffic jam with barbecue without a fork can relate, dude. And I love that about you, your ability to admit that. My fiance can get off my ass finally now.
I love it. Well, even eating with my hands, it was incredible stuff.
Shehan Jeyarajah, CBSSports.com. The article is up there. You got to check it out. Shehan, thank you so much for spending time with us, dude. We look forward to talking to you more as we ramp up here towards football season. A job well done.
Thank you so much for having me.